Here we are, somewhere in the circle, dancing madly backwards roundabout. And who's to blame for little ones who stumble? Who can throw the stone and knock them out? There's trouble in the kingdom. Send a message to the king. Send a message. This is the Community Solutions podcast. Andrew Richter, Jason Bradley, deep from the bowels of our underground lair, where we are going to get right to business and we are going to discuss this war, not hide in the basement like our president. What's going on?
Well, I've learned he's got like a massage table and a nice 65-inch TV down his basement. I mean,
Yeah?
and then he's got a lot of places to nap. So, I mean, there's a diaper changing station. So
For him?
Yes, he's got
Yeah.
everything. He's got everything he needs down there. You don't need to come out of there.
Yeah.
Let me see. The song is Message in a Bottle.
No.
Yeah, you said send a message. It's
Yes, I
Message
did.
in a bottle.
But not message in a bottle.
Yeah, who's that?
Yeah.
That's
That's
Robert Palmer.
the police.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
What did I say?
Robert Palmer. You're
Not addicted to love. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I know his
Some
one
like-
hit from
Yeah.
1983 or whatever.
He had more than one.
Yeah, he had like three. I'll tell you that. It's that Sting guy. He'd have never made it if he stayed with those police guys. Anyway,
Yes.
I have no idea. We have to get down to business, Jay.
Yeah.
So I have no idea who sang the song.
It's a band called, when we've featured them on the podcast before, King's X. Send a message off their
King's
second album, Gretchen Goes to Nebraska.
Well, I knew the album because they saw the Children of the Corn there, right?
Okay.
I just watched that the other day.
I'm sure you've heard King's X songs before. the time and the era you were interested in music quite a bit, they had some singles in there. So,
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's Love was like on heavy rotation on MTV. You'd probably know it if you heard it or saw the video.
Yeah, it's funny all the things I missed.
Yeah.
Just growing up, it's just incredible.
They had some hits. Lost in Germany. No, Over My Head.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. It is over your head.
Radiohead.
All right. Moving on.
It's amazing what I missed.
It's okay.
It's incredible.
Amazing three-piece band, though. I tell you what, they're still out there and doing it.
Good.
So
Good.
yeah.
And legally alive, unlike the drummer from Rolling Stones, right? I mean,
Yeah. Well, they may have had to. Is he still alive? I better check before.
I don't know, but I think he
making a
was dead in the
joke.
90s the last time.
Could be old Charlie Watt.
What's his name? Richards?
No, Charlie Watt is a drummer.
No, the other guy then, the really old-looking guy.
Keith Richards,
Yeah.
the guitar player.
He's still alive?
He's still alive, yes. Yes.
Oh, Mick's still. Mick's got to be 80.
Charlie Watt did die.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, like back in 2021 or something like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So much for that then.
Yeah.
Jay, got to ask this.
Yes.
We got to address what's going on over on the other side of the world.
I'd love to.
And I wish we could just, sometimes I wish I lived in the 1800s and I didn't have to worry about anything beyond, my farm or something.
Yeah.
Small world, you just can't get away from conflicts everywhere. And this is a conflict that's been going on for a long, long time. You and I have talked about the rise of anti-Semitism recently, and I think it's very high. I think it's at a higher point than I can say I've ever remembered it. But just your thoughts, reactions to there's no way to call it but a terrorist attack in Israel. Israel beginning to respond. Israel very superior militarily. I mean, it's really a joke. I mean, if Israel wanted to bomb the hell out of all those countries, they could.
Yeah.
They definitely have the means. I don't think they want to do that.
They have showed much restraint for a very long time.
I think too much, and I'm not advocating war. I'm not. They have a right to self-defense.
Yes.
And I think showing restraint has pretty much gotten them nothing.
Yeah.
So-
I'm no war hawk at all, but
And I'm a recovering neocon. We know
But
that.
I am definitely in favor of self-defense. You know, the right to defend your life, to defend the lives of your family. You know, I probably have a little different take on this, and I'm sure it will result in me being called all sorts of names above them. You know, or
You're going to outdo me this week, Jay?
I'll be called a Zionist. I'll be called a whatever. But
Well, I'm carrying Putin's water, so
well, yeah.
me and Tucker Carlson.
But I believe that, and this is going to sound dumb, but it really isn't. If you look back, that we could do a whole show on this with the history of Palestine, when it became Palestine, and how it became Palestine, and that really there's not such a thing as Palestinians. They're not a real thing. I mean, I say that knowing that, again, that's probably going to cause me all sorts of death threats and hate mail.
Well, factually, you're correct.
Right.
Whether anybody wants to parse your words or not, I mean...
we have texts showing that the Israelites were in that area, that those were their boundaries 3,000 years ago.
Yeah, I got that map in my car, too. I mean, and that's the thing. I mean, my question to you, though, and I know I'm jumping ahead here, is why can't we have peace over there? I mean, obviously, these terror groups can't do what they're doing without some sort of government sponsorship. There's just no way that can happen. There's no way the money
is definitely.
There's no way the money can be funneled. There's no way the airspace and all that can be open. I mean, the governments are in on it, no question about it. But what I have longed to find a long-term, because I want peace. Okay, I don't want peace at any price.
Right.
Okay, but I mean, why did this happen, and where are we? I mean, I interrupted your history lesson there, but.
Well, yeah. I mean, my whole position on it is, I support the Palestinian people. Even though I say there's no such thing as Palestinian people. I mean, they all came from Syria and whatever. And there are many of them that are in places like Jordan, Syria, and nobody seems to want them there either. And so my heart does go out to them in that regard. However, that is historically Israel, until it came and got decimated by all these different groups that came through the Babylonian Empire, Alexander the Great.
Not to mention all the colonization.
Right, the Roman Empire, the Ottoman Empire.
The British, the French, because the Ottoman Empire, that fell after World War I. And the Brits and everybody took over.
I know.
Iraq, Turkey, Iran were all colonized, and that changed after World War II. But I mean, it was. They've all been under the.
Even back before that, though, I mean, you had constant war. You had the Jews, who were never really in control of Jerusalem, but there was.
Well, the Palestinian government claims Jerusalem is theirs,
right? But I mean, you had like Salahuddin, in the Crusades, and then you had like King Richard, and you had all these forces that were vying for this area, all claiming it as their holy land, where, I'm sorry, but it has been Israel, longer than any of these groups have had claim to it. And so that you have a people group with no country, no place to go, and with what happened to them under the Holocaust. Having a place for this group to be able to immigrate to, right? Self-govern, to have a place of their own and make it, hey, why not traditionally where they've been for 3,000 years? It kind of makes sense. I'm sorry. It's always been theirs. It's just, all these crazy progressives that want to claim that, Palestinians deserve to have this and there can't be a two-state solution. I'm going to say there can't be a two-state solution. I'm going to agree with that because the Palestinians won't rest until the Jews are all dead. But And I mean like Hamas,
Right,
is what
right.
I mean, and I would say the Palestinian Authority also holds
Whoever
that
that is.
because it's in their documents. Okay.
Whoever that, I mean, that was Yasser Arafat for 40
Right.
years, and
Right.
he's
And
been
Mahmoud
dead for-
Abbas,
yeah,
I think, is
right.
the guy now. Anyways, you have a group that it's such a small strip of land, and you have.
Yeah, I don't think people have a concept of how
Yeah.
small of a country Israel
I mean, you
is.
want to talk about colonization? Let's look at what countries are ruled by Islam. How about all of the Middle East into North Africa, all the way from Egypt over to Morocco?
Yeah.
Huh? How about that? I'm
That's
sorry,
not enough
but
for them.
yeah, let's take a look at your history with
Well, and all Islam followers don't all like each other.
no.
There's that
you have
with
the
it,
Shias and you
Look at
have
Iraq.
the Sunnis.
You've got the Shia, the Sunni, and then you got the Kurds, who are
Some are Islamic, some are Christian,
Right.
Depending on what country
in the
they're
north there, and it's a little
Yeah.
ethnically mixed.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, you've basically got three providences.
Yeah,
there in that
and you've got the
country.
Wahhabists in Saudi Arabia.
Oh, Iran,
and
they've
it's-
had that too. They've had the mullahs that certainly don't represent everybody in that country. And
Oh, they represent nobody. In
yeah,
fact,
represent probably less than. I mean, if you go back to
Mm-hmm.
even the Shah, I mean, even he was much more representative of Iran. But
yes and no. I
ultimately,
mean,
he was propped up by Western powers. Sorry, but
yeah,
it's true.
right?
I know he was an ally in a lot of respects, and always say this: be careful what you wish for.
Right.
You overthrow him because he's a dictator. Well,
Right.
You get the Khomeini, and you get
Right. But then you
mullahs.
look at what was going on there during the 30s and the 40s with Iran changing their name from Persia to
Yeah.
Aryan or
Right,
Iran,
which was-
right, to be in league with Hitler. And there is a long history of hating the Jews.
Yeah, well,
you know,
yeah,
and
that's-
that is what's going on here is you have Iran pulling strings and funneling money.
But what is the deal with the anti-Semitism rise in Europe? That's what I find.
There's a lot of Muslims that
Okay,
have emigrated into Europe.
There's a lot, but it's not 70% of the nations. What is? Do they not know? You know what happened to these people's great grandparents? I mean, you know, what? You know, letting Israel have Jews have a small amount of land and live in peace.
Yeah.
Why is it so unreasonable to
Yeah,
even our quote unquote friends and allies, as
Right.
as the liberals like to say?
I know, but they like to say that, give this line about colonization because they expanded their borders a little bit in '67.
Yeah, but they were
they
attacked.
they had to take the Golan Heights because it was a spot where they knew that they were going to be under attack.
And they
constantly,
and they were
because
after
there was high
that.
ground.
They were after that. Go back to the Yom Kippur War of the 70s and the 6-Day War. They were right. It was a defensive. It was an aggressive defensive move, and they were attacked anyway.
Yeah,
The two wars happened despite, Israel's attempts to sort of just move. I would call it a peace through strength move, is what I would call it. And the wars happened anyhow. I mean,
Yeah.
I just look. I don't know what's going. Here's what I know.
Yeah.
Here's what I know. To see this and to see what's going on over with Ukraine and Russia, I'm so sick of. I'm beyond sick of it.
yeah,
And to see an administration, and now look, I don't like Joe Biden. I didn't vote for him. I wouldn't vote for him if you hung me by a fingernail. But there's a such thing as competence. There's a such thing as getting off your ass and being a leader. And this president, I don't know if this guy, I don't know what could light a fire under his rear end. I really don't. And if this can't do it, I don't know what can. He seems to be dazed and confused. I noticed the other day he did speak in some complete sentences. But I mean,
Yeah.
I just
he sent warships. I'm thankful for that. Like he actually did the right thing for once in that respect. He could have
did it.
done a lot
it
less.
still feels
half-hearted.
Like we're leaderless. You know, it's like I don't know. What I'd like him to do first off is call out his own party.
Yeah, absolutely.
Call it out for what it is.
Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar and
these liberal
Whitmer.
Universities and things like that.
Yeah.
He ought to call them out. Like I said, he's like Walls. He won't stand up to the far left.
He should say, "There's no room for bigots in this party.
No room for anybody who's pro-life. No room for anybody who doesn't want to, censor somebody on social media.
Yeah.
But anti-Semitism, that's got a home in the Democratic Party.
Absolutely.
And the fact that he can't say that,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm going to tell you something. Bill Clinton would have said that.
Yeah.
I think Barack Obama would have said that.
He wouldn't have meant it, but he would have said it.
Jimmy Carter would have said it.
Yep.
Joe Biden on silent.
So those of you that listen to the show that are Democrats, I really do need to ask you a question. If this is what you call your home party, and these are the kind of people that your party entertains, and you're not willing to kick them out, you're willing to keep nominating them, keep electing them to office.
It's looking the other way.
What does that say about you?
It's like Democrats who, don't believe that a 5-year-old can change their gender. They'll tell you that in private, but they won't come out and say it in public.
What does that say about you? I'll tell you, before you start pointing fingers back here, I didn't like a lot of stuff going on in the Republican Party. I didn't like the fact that they would say one thing and do another. I didn't like the fact that it seemed like they were as big government as anybody. So I quit. I became an independent. I will vote for anyone that I feel best represents my values, but I'm not going to.
Glad to know you followed me into the cynical party, Jay.
That was a long time ago.
No, that was like yesterday.
Really?
I saw your Facebook status change to independent the other day.
But I'm sorry. Any of you here in the Minneapolis area that want to support Ilhan Omar, please tell me why. I would like to understand why. Is it because you're an anti-Semite, or is it because you would rather have an anti-Semite over a Republican? Or a libertarian,
I come back to this. If Omar's ever taken out, it's going to be by primary. Same thing with Tlaib.
She won't be because it's a rigged system.
Yeah, well,
they've got all that handled. It is legal.
She was handed that position when Keith Ellison. They had that all mapped out behind the scenes.
Absolutely,
she was handpicked to be in this Democratic Party, Democratic leadership, and I'm going to give some credit to Ken Martin because he didn't call out Omar by name, but he did call out the DHS or the what's the group in Minneapolis that has endorsed like anti-Semitic candidates or something. I can't think of their name. I probably shouldn't say this if I'm on Twitter. He called them out on Twitter, and I give him some credit for that. He didn't do it by name, but he did say,
okay, that's a little cowardly.
It is, but I think he linked one of their posts to his. Like, I think he.
Oh, that's good.
I could look it up, but I mean, and I got to say, it's been a rare. He and Dean Phillips called a lot of people out as well.
Good.
And I've seen nothing other than those two, but I have seen it a little bit.
Thank you. Thank you for doing that.
And I thank you to Mr. Phillips, who was my congressman. And I do thank him for that because. And he's called out Joe Biden that he doesn't want Biden to run again.
That's true.
So to give him some credit, he has spoken up, and believe me, he has taken it from the left. You should see some of the comments on Twitter against him.
Oh, I'm sure.
So it is not an uncourageous stance that they've done that. So I will credit Ken Martin and Dean Phillips for doing some of that.
Right. Well, and they have to because it's getting serious. I don't know if you saw today the former leader of Hamas, who's living in Qatar now because I don't know why.
Exile.
He's in exile or whatever.
We're feeding him and clothing him and
or something like that. Has called.
We just hang him.
Yeah.
I would just do that. Would that be easier?
But it'd be nice if he just woke up at one of our army bases one day, huh? Yeah. I wouldn't cry. This guy has.
I didn't know a cliff was right there.
This guy has called for a worldwide day of jihad tomorrow, the October 13th.
Can I just say this?
Yes.
If you're going to call for a worldwide day of jihad, why would you announce it? That's like saying you're going to hijack a plane tomorrow. I mean, I don't know. Look, he might be blustering. He might be full of crap.
Well, I'll tell you, NYPD is on full alert. Yeah, they're everybody's on tomorrow.
Yeah, well, we got a wide open border.
Yeah, but FBI or our government refuses to acknowledge it.
Yeah,
so
well, the FBI couldn't grab their ass with both hands, so that doesn't surprise me.
Well, they missed 9/11 too, so
they've missed everything.
Yeah.
They've literally missed everything.
Except
look at the
maybe
file.
John Kennedy's head.
Yeah, look at the file they had on Lee Harvey Oswald. They literally missed everything, okay? And look, I don't want to hear this rank and file. I got to support the rank and file crap. I'm tired of hearing that. The more I see the people we hire in the FBI and the CIA, the more unspectacular they look.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, but it's true. And I have called out conservatives who have blindly, in my opinion, supported these things for way too long.
Yeah.
I mean, there's cracks in that now, but 15, 20 years ago, there weren't.
Right.
And so it just... look, whatever they say, the opposite is true. So just think of it like that.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, the president could have done a little bit more. Christ.
Yeah.
If it was Ukraine, we'd be sending them $500 million a day.
Yeah, that's
the Biden
funny.
family gold mine is over there, though. So.
Yeah. So what does that mean for us, though? I mean, we've said we won't get involved in a war between Israel and Hamas.
That's bull. We've been involved in it since 1948.
We will provide support, but we're not going to have boots on the ground.
They don't need boots on the ground.
Right.
Israel doesn't need that.
I mean, they're a premier fighting force.
They're one of the top. You see Netanyahu calling up 600,000 people. I didn't know that many lived there.
Yeah, it's like 8 million or something like that. It's in between 8 and 9 million that live there. So they've got it.
It's like the size of Georgia. I mean, population wise. Yeah, but there's look. We're not going to get involved. We are involved. Look, unfortunately, the United States has just become the world's policeman, and we are involved.
Yeah.
I mean, now, do we have troops on the ground? No. I guess I can't dismiss that stuff 100%.
I mean, are we able to fight a war on two fronts?
No.
And possibly three, because if these two blow up into what's going to happen, China and Hong Kong.
Okay, but that's when you say a war on two fronts, we don't fight wars the way we used to.
Right.
Can we go there and topple a government? Sure. Well, that's not the end of the war.
Right.
We found that out in Afghanistan and in Iraq.
Right.
Same thing in World War II. Yeah, okay, we toppled the German government. We've been in Germany ever since.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think the East Germans are about to invade, but we haven't taken troops out of there since 1945.
Well, part of that is because of our place in NATO and keeping an eye on Russia.
Okay.
But it's...
I think Germany's been built back up. I think they can take over that now.
Yeah. I know there was a period of time where they weren't allowed to have a military, right? And they weren't allowed to build a weaponry, but that's done, right?
Right. And again, there was a time when West Germany was a very strong country, when Helmut Kohl was there.
Right.
They were very strong militarily. They've kind of become semi-socialists now. It's not as bad as some of the other countries, but I mean, ultimately, what should be happening is we should be Why is it hard to fight a war? Because we have troops in places that we don't need to.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, that's part of it.
I mean, I guess you could call those troops up, though, from Germany and, reassign them to Greenland or whatever you got to do. I mean, we've got troops in Greenland.
Well, but here's the other thing about fighting a war.
Yeah.
Ultimately, if you finance one side of a war, we found this out in World War I. If you're going to print money to support countries, if you're going to give those countries a blank check, give them every weapon that we have. We're giving nuclear weapons to Ukraine.
Yeah.
Now, Russia wins this war. Who gets those nuclear weapons?
That's a great
question. We're told, there's all these unaccounted for nukes in Russia. Which, right. Whatever. I don't believe that.
Well,
but
I don't know.
I don't believe that. I think they're nuclear capable. I don't think they have a ton of nuclear weapons.
Do you think they destroyed them with the agreement at the end of the Cold War? Or they just hid them? I think they just hid them personally, but
I think they destroyed enough to. I think there are some,
yeah,
but I think it's a small
they're
percentage.
buried in a snowbank in Siberia.
Or they're in Iran.
Yeah, they could have
they're
moved
in
some
North
to Iran.
Korea.
Yeah.
They could be there. I mean, I don't know. But yeah, I think they destroyed some because I think destroying some keeps enough people at bay. I think the Eastern European countries probably took care of whatever they had, or Poland as soon as they took over themselves, or they took control of them, something like that. So I think they're certainly nuclear capable. I don't think though that I do think it's half propaganda from our government that we're supposed to stand here and be in fear all the time. Because fear motivates government control. So I don't know that I buy that. And we found out with and this is going to sound kind of dumb, but we were told the same thing about Iraq.
Yeah.
Quite frankly, we really didn't find very much over there. I don't know why.
Right.
We still have no explanation. Did Saddam destroy them? Did he hide them somewhere? Did he sell them? Did he, destroy them before we invaded? I don't know.
Yes.
So, who knows? I just know that this is going to sound bad because I do care about the people in the rest of the world, but I am really tired of the endless blank check. I've just had it with it.
Yeah.
And, my support for sending money overseas while my government tells me I'm undertaxed is getting in my crawl pretty hard.
Yeah.
So I don't know what becomes of it. I really don't. And boy, Zelensky's pissing me off. Tell you what, I wouldn't give that a-hole another cent.
Yeah.
That's just me. He basically is saying, we need more. You got to send more. Screw you.
We've sent plenty.
Fight yourselves.
You've wasted a bunch of it.
Where is it all? We've sent you more weapons. You could wipe out the world. Just what an ungrateful a-hole. Just screw you. I'm sorry, but that's because I do feel bad for the people caught in the middle. The Russians too.
Yeah.
They're also being killed.
Yeah.
And it shouldn't be happening. And but to sit there and not be grateful for the country that's propping you up. It's just.
Yeah.
If I could knee him in the crotch, I would. He's just a pinhead.
Yeah, I don't know. It's one of those things where you feel
Kiss
bad.
Biden's ass.
You feel bad for the people on both sides, but the leaders on both sides are terrible. Zelensky's terrible. He's tied in with the people that were helping Biden out with Burisma. And then on the other hand, you have
Burisma was in bed with both governments. Right. They're in bed with the one before Zelensky.
Oh, I know. And then you've got Putin on the other side is terrible, and evil, and the people that he follows and has based his national/international strategy on, with the capital T traditionalists that are trying to bring everybody back into like this nationalistic dark ages kind of thing. Nationalism isn't bad when it's done from a vantage point of strengthening your country, but when you do it from a place of wanting to gain power, when you're doing it from a selfish vantage point like this, you have Russia and Iran both kind of in the same camp, and it's interesting, and we won't get into it a bunch now, but like in the book of Ezekiel in the Bible, it talks about Gog and Magog and all this stuff, and hooks being set in the jaws to bring everybody to Megiddo, which is where the final battle of the world's going to take place, and all of this stuff. Well, it leads to Russia and Iran actually working together, which has never really happened until now. And so it kind of makes people's ears perk up a little bit, and there's some interesting things going on there.
Well, again, part of it is economic.
Yeah.
Russia cutting off cutting off oil sales to the United States has actually strengthened Russia because they're selling them to Middle Eastern countries, or they're selling them to other countries now and gaining their friendship, strengthening the ruble against our dollar. So, it's actually kind of backfired a little bit. It certainly hasn't hurt them. It's hurt us paying more because we have a government that cuts imports and then limits domestic production, which of course screws with the supply and demand. You just wonder if President Biden could pass I think a kid who learns economics for a week, who's like 8 years old, could do better on an economics test than Mr. Biden could.
Yeah, probably.
I mean, it's really not hard. I mean, it's really not difficult. So it's all ugly. Again, this president is sinking quickly.
Yeah.
And you know what? As much as I don't want him to get reelected, he's the president for another 16 or 18 months or whatever it is. And I don't want him to fail. I mean, I'm just going to say this straight out. I don't want him to fail.
Yeah.
So, because he fails, then we all fail. A lot of us fail.
I want to be successful. I want prices to go down. I want my dollar to go further. I don't want to have to work as hard as I do just to keep my head above water. Yeah, I don't.
But this administration's got to go.
Yeah.
They just got to go. And I'll tell you, let's throw the other thing that happened, which is really quick.
Yeah.
Robert Kennedy becoming an independent, which I could see coming.
Right.
I mean, he's clearly out of step with the modern Democratic Party.
And they weren't having none of them. They weren't letting him. There were no debates.
They were denying him Secret Service protection.
I know. That's ridiculous.
His name's Kennedy. I mean, gee whiz.
He might need a little Secret Service protection based on his
You know why he thinks
history.
they did that? Did you hear what he said to Sean Hannity about
No.
why he thinks so?
I missed that.
He said that he thinks they're doing it to hurt him financially so that he has to pay
for
his own security. So now he has to go do that.
Yeah.
So then he can't use the money for campaign stuff.
Right.
So, I mean, that's just down and dirty.
Well, isn't that how they fight, though?
Yeah,
I mean, it doesn't matter if it's legal or
What
right.
do you think, though? Can Kennedy make a independent run and make a...
Yeah?
Because I think there's an appetite.
I don't think he can win. But
he can win.
I think
can
he can
Ross Perot this race?
I think he can. Unfortunately, I don't know where he takes more from.
I don't know.
The never Trumpers in the Republican Party might swing that way, and the people who are more moderate Democrats might swing that way.
I don't know. I mean, when 2/3 of the Democrats in private polls tell you they don't want Biden to be the candidate.
Yeah.
If a former Democrat gets...
But they also say anybody but Trump. They're willing to burn down their own house despite, it's...
Stick out their nose despite their face.
Yeah.
I don't know. See, I always say that a third party candidate doesn't take. I always say you earn votes. And I get what you're saying, though. Again, you have to look at it state by state, and that's where I don't know. You can take 5, 7, 10% nationally.
Yeah.
How does that break down? The electoral college is what matters.
Right.
So if Kennedy's going to make it, this is one of the things Ross Perot failed at. Perot should have tried to win. Okay, I can't win. He should have tried to George Wallace the thing.
Yeah.
I can't win the general election, but I can throw a monkey wrench in this. And that was the mistake.
I can go after Pennsylvania or...
He could have gone after a lot of states. There were states he came in second. And had he focused on 6 to 10 states with his money...
If he goes after the swing states, that's where I think I would go. You don't go to California. You don't go to Florida. You don't...
No, but I think he should go after smaller states too, where you can swing the vote. A state like Iowa, a state like Wisconsin, a state like
Iowa's pretty red right now.
It is right now. And maybe Iowa's a bad example, but you could go after smaller states like that.
Yeah.
You look at the electoral map and you say, okay, well, what states? There's
maybe Nevada.
Nevada would be, I think, the Southwest is a place he could go. Colorado's certainly a place he could go. I think New Mexico's a place he could go.
Yeah.
Arizona's a place he could go, although they may not count the votes.
Right.
until 2071. There's
Yeah, it's true.
I actually think I think Washington and Oregon are ripe to change as well, because hear me out.
Yeah.
You've got the far left controlling the big cities. You've got the right controlling the rural, and you've got people who don't want to pick one or the other.
Yeah.
And I think that may be an opportunity there.
What about if you're living in a place?
Maine, maybe a state like New Hampshire, a state.
Maine and New Hampshire can go red. So I don't see anybody in that state maybe throwing their vote. But what about in a state like, and again, Vermont is so socialist. What if you took a state though where, let's use Washington as an example. Let's use Oregon. Okay, Portland is way left. It's gone. But the rest of the state, I mean, there's a number of counties in western Oregon that are trying to petition to become part of Idaho.
Yeah.
Right? If you're Republicans in Oregon, do you vote for the Republican candidate or do you vote for Robert Kennedy to try and throw Biden? And what does that do then in some of those where it's a blue state, you're not going to win?
Well, actually, if you look at Trump's numbers there, he got like 45%. I mean, he didn't.
Yeah.
I mean, he did. President Bush did okay there back in the day. I know it's changed since then, but I would be concerned about the down the ballot too. That would worry me. But I think you have to consider throwing Biden.
Yeah.
You got to consider that. I mean, that would take an effort, a concerted effort to do that.
Right.
But I think you've got to consider that. You've got to consider throwing him.
Republicans in blue states, if you maybe throw your weight behind Kennedy and you peel off enough disaffected Democrats, maybe Kennedy wins a state or two and keeps Biden from winning the presidency.
And see, here's another thing. This is, I think it so hurts President Biden.
Yeah.
Because he's going to have to campaign in these blue states now.
Right.
I mean,
or he's not. I don't know.
Well, but I mean, if you're right in this scenario, and I'm sure we'll start to see polling on this in the next couple of months, even if Kennedy could pick off 10%, you've got to go back there. Say you're talking, I don't know what state this would be, but say you're talking about a state that Biden won by 6 or by 8.
Yeah.
Well, if Kennedy goes in there and he's polling 10%, you've got to go in there now.
Right.
You have no choice. You can't leave it and just say, oh, well, I won it last time.
Right.
Trump's running. They won't vote for him. Well, and you're going to have to stretch your resources.
Yeah.
And I think the Republican can maybe come in there and spend all their time in Pennsylvania and all their time in Wisconsin.
Yeah. I mean, in those swing states, I mean, if Kennedy really wants to be a spoiler, he would really hit some of those swing states hard. Because if he can split that vote with Biden, you're the spoiler, man. It's...
Well, we'll see what happens, and we'll see if he stays in it for the long haul.
Yeah.
I mean, we'll see. But, I mean, I just always think back to that 92 election.
Right.
And just think if Ross Perot would have played his cards differently. I mean, a guy got 20% of the vote or 19% of the vote, and it's just amazing that didn't translate into any electoral college votes.
Yeah. I don't know. I imagine Cornel West stays into the general too as the Green Party guy.
Yeah, I'm sure he does.
He may pull some disaffected far lefties away.
Yeah, and I don't know why they'd be disaffected with Biden. He's done everything the far left's asked him.
Yeah, I mean, other than the fact he's kind of an embarrassment.
Right. And look, if Cornel West was smart, he'd make that his argument.
Yeah.
Okay, he's liberal, but he's dead. I mean, I'm being facetious, but... the guy's invisible.
Right.
I mean, it's not a stupid argument to make.
Right.
I don't know. I mean, I just, it could be, there's a lot of people who don't want to vote for Trump or Biden for whatever reason.
Yeah.
It's just true. And there's an appetite for a third party candidate there. He picks as his running mate might be interesting too. I mean,
Kennedy?
That could be a factor.
Yeah. Who do you think it'd be?
Well, I would say the person who fits the bill the best is Tulsi Gabbard.
Yeah.
I think she's the person who fit, another disaffected Democrat,
Right.
who is conservative enough on some stuff.
That could pull some
Kind of like Kennedy
votes away,
is.
too.
You know, he's conservative enough on X amount of issues that
He's a fascist on climate, but
right, but outside of that, I mean, if you look at his free speech arguments and you look at his anti-shutdown arguments, his doesn't want to be the world's, fund endless wars. He's criticized the Fed. I mean, it's.
there's things I agree with him on.
I mean, there
are things that no way.
Yeah, I mean, it ain't 80-20 with me, but it's 40-60 maybe.
Yeah.
And so I think she's the obvious choice if the two wanted to put themselves together. There's another one, if I could think of another disaffected Democrat that I'm not sure is going to run again, Kristen Sinema would be another. Yeah. And I think from a state like Arizona, I don't know that she's going to run again.
Yeah, I don't know. Going head to head with Carrie Lake. I mean, she's
and a
popular
Democrat.
enough.
The Democrats already have other people they don't want to pick.
I'm sure they don't.
So she was going to have to run as an independent. And
really?
Yeah. And
she's going to lose her
yes,
primary.
I think so.
Really?
I think even though she is doing what she said she would do.
Yeah.
She said she was
She's
a moderate
not far
Democrat.
left enough.
Yeah, she's not wacko enough. So there's several that have already thrown their hat in the ring, and they are well financed. And I think she will lose a primary. Wow. And so, but I think making an independent run would be tough, even though Arizona is a very independent-minded state.
Yeah.
I mean, they're not, they're very much a down-the-middle state.
Yeah.
So she kind of fit them a little bit. But again, the Democratic activists don't want her. So,
but they haven't fixed anything either, because the former Secretary of State's now the governor.
And that's not a conflict of interest.
I don't. She didn't recuse herself from any of that when the election was going on.
She could have resigned in the summer.
Could have, didn't, because she wasn't going to be able to run again. Anyways,
Are we going way off tonight or what?
Well, but we will get to our topic. We do have another topic. We'll get to it. We'll get to it.
We're just talking.
Can Carrie Lake even win a statewide election without the election system being fixed? And she lost the last statewide election.
Well, I think she has to focus on winning and not focus on that anymore. Yeah. And I think she's a smart lady. I think she can do it. But she's got to start, got to get off the talk show circuit. Is she even running officially? I mean, I don't even know. Okay.
Yeah, she's already got people working on her campaign.
But I think I think she can if she focuses on the issues and all that kind of stuff. I think if it's about last time, if it's about I got screwed, I got effed, if that's the whole campaign, I think she's going to have a tough time. I think if it's about, look, whatever happened in that election happened. Here's what I want to do for Arizona, blah, blah, blah. I think she's definitely got a shot. No doubt about it. So, I think she can, but I think in a three-way race, who knows what would happen if that throws a monkey wrench into...
Well, that's true. I mean,
now 35 to 40% can win.
A lot of Democrats will probably stay with Kristen Sinema if she runs as an independent.
I think there'll be a fair amount that will. That just, that thinks she's doing a good job. And so, or thinks she's keeping her promises or whatever. But she promised to be a moderate Democrat, is one of the few moderate Democrats that's going to get primaried because of it. So, I mean, I don't know. Go figure.
And does Joe Manchin lose this time around?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
I don't think he runs. I don't think he runs. I don't.
Interesting.
I don't think. Here's why.
Yeah.
The only reason he ran in 2018 was because it was an off year. Had that been a presidential year and Trump won the state by 45, there's no way Manchin retains it.
No.
And in 24, it'll be a presidential year. And even though, and I've said this about Joe Manchin, he's a more reliable Republican vote than about 20 Republican senators I can think of.
Mitt Romney, Mitch
McConnell. I can name them all. Susan Collins. You go through the list. Lisa Murkowski. But I say he goes down with the Democratic label. I think he goes down with. There's the last time he won by 2.
Yeah.
And that was in an off year. And he basically won by voting for Brett Kavanaugh, voting for Trump's tax cuts. That's how he got it.
Yeah.
And I just don't see it. I don't see Democrats funding him.
Yeah.
I don't see them. I just don't see that. I think he's the Democrats' only chance to keep that seat. If he were smart, he'd just run as a Republican. Just switch parties.
Yeah.
Switch parties.
Well, one other question before we move on to the subject, just because I forgot about this when we were talking about the last subject. We know full well that there are countries that sell passports down in Latin America, and there's a whole bunch of them from the Middle East that have gone through Venezuela to get passports and are coming up through our southern border. There's a whole mess of them that they've caught. What do you think are the chances that we've let a whole ton of them in that, and I don't mean just regular Middle Eastern people, I mean Hamas, Hezbollah, Al-Qaeda, ISIS, Taliban, you go down the list. Sleeper cells sitting in every city.
How did they get in here before 9/11?
Yeah.
Wide open border.
Right.
They got visas after 9/11.
Yeah.
One of them got mailed a pilot's license or something after 9/11.
Yes.
So the answer is high.
Okay.
Now, are these sleepers, are these thousands of, I mean, this is the thing about a sleeper cell. I think people don't have a grasp of what that means. A sleeper cell is not a group of hundreds of thousands of people who are getting together. They're
15.
They're look at the hijackers on 9/11. What were there, 15 or 18? Yeah. That's the kind of thing that we're talking about. Are there sleeper cells? Absolutely. Are they being let into our country with our government's okay? Yes.
Yeah.
They are. Still, even to this day.
And
Israel gets the hell bombed out of them, and we're still letting in whoever wants to come here.
Yeah. And I would say, and I haven't heard anybody talk about this, but I'm willing to bet that you have Iran who is giving money to the cartels in Mexico to make sure that they get across.
Yeah. Sure.
And
guess where that money came from? Us.
Yeah. Exactly it did.
We're funding the blood money.
Yeah.
On both ends.
Yep.
Because we're consuming the drug cartel and we're funding it on the other end.
Yeah.
So, yeah, no doubt about it.
Awesome. All right, just wanted to
check. You gotta love American consumption, man. We consume everything.
Oh, boy. Oh, boy.
Oh, Jay, that's the longest opening we've ever done.
Well, there's a lot going on. We're in troubled times, Andrew.
Well, it's great. I love the shows where we don't prep and we don't do anything. This is one of these shows. Because you and I can do this. You and I can do this for days if we wanted. If we could inject ourselves with some speed or something, we could do that.
Right.
And just go and go and go and go and go and go and go. I mean, that's just I've said this before. I have chemistry with two people, you and my wife. That's it. And so
different types of chemistry.
Very much so. Yes. But I mean it's the kind of thing where we don't have to, we can just feed off of each other. And I love the kind of shows where we do this.
Yeah.
So, and I mean, getting into what we're going to talk, why don't you bring up what we're going to talk about here? Because we've gone so far to the deep end. We're already past my bedtime. My Lifetime movie, lucky it's taping.
Yeah. All right. So we're coming into an election year, right? Next year's an election year. And we spend so much dang time focusing on the national races, focusing mainly on president and to a little lesser degree, Senate races, House races. Okay. And we'll look at the House races here in Minnesota a little bit, but they won't get much play. And then you get down to, hey, we still have city council races, county board races, school board races. There are other local things that are going on.
I know your favorite, soil and water conservation. Hospital districts. We got all sorts of stuff happening, right?
So I thought it would be good for us to take a look at where things sit locally, because we really need to hone in on this. If we want to change our government, if we want to change the direction that this nation is, it's got to be bottom up. It can't be top down. That's how we got in this problem, is by disregarding the Constitution and trying to implement a top-down solution.
You said top down.
Yeah. Now, that's much different than trickle-down, all right? I believe in trickle-down economics. I don't believe in top-down government. Top-down government is much different.
You just said trickle down.
Anytime that you have the federal government telling the governments below it to do something, you run into a problem, and we have made toilet paper out of the Constitution at this point anyways. So we thought, well, let's take a look at what...
I don't believe in the Constitution anymore anyway.
Yeah?
I mean, I've just decided I don't care. No, I'm serious, Jay. It just don't matter anymore.
Oh, boy.
When a majority of people don't care about it, then I don't care about it either.
Right.
That's what I...
Right. By the way, why are you wearing the Ugly Twins hat? Who bought you that? Did Molly?
I did.
You bought the Ugly Twins hat.
It. You know she wouldn't buy anything that looks like crap. I thought it was a Marlins hat when I saw it.
Yeah.
I'm wearing it in honor of them. And Brad Carlson, was teasing me. We were texting the other day that I told you they'd win one series.
They did win one series.
I got to admit, Brad was pretty right.
Yeah.
On that. We'll have him on my show again to talk about it. But so just in honor of the season being over, it's always just, I mean, even though I don't follow baseball like I did when I was younger because I don't like analytics and all that, it's always sad when it ends and I'm not going to see the Twins play again until spring training. Mm-hmm. The Wild start tomorrow and the Timberwolves start in 2 weeks. So we're into that season now. And the Vikings, I don't know if they're allegedly playing, but I don't know that they're
not really.
Yeah,
they show up.
Purple uniforms.
Somebody shows up in their uniforms. I don't know.
Somebody shows up in purple uniforms. I don't know if it's football players.
Okay. Anyways, so we're going to go back and we're going to explain exactly what happened in local government, why it's wrong from the very notions of how we've set up local government, and what we need to do to fix it. All right.
Let me say something about that.
Yeah.
There are short-term solutions and long-term solutions, Jay. We are community solutions, so we always offer solutions. But changing this didn't happen overnight, and it won't change overnight.
Nope.
So that's something to just keep in mind, that short-term goals, long-term goals. Mm-hmm. So just that'll be a theme that I come back to. Go ahead.
Okay. Let's get into some of the history, because in order to understand why local governments are set up the way that they are now, we have to understand where we came from. And this podcast is good for anybody in the country, because everybody in the country really has that same sort of setup. It's not unique to Minnesota.
There's some differences.
Yeah, there's some small differences, but generally speaking, it's the same. Do you want to talk a little bit about like 1800s New York and why there was such a high level of corruption within local governments that they had to do something differently?
Well, the 5 boroughs and Tammany Hall and the whole, God, New York's a podcast in and of itself.
Yeah.
To be
Well,
honest.
I mean, it happened to other places too. I mean, we could talk about any city.
Yeah,
I just know it's most famous. I mean,
yeah,
really.
I just, again, you had New York City, which was 5 cities in one. Mm-hmm. You had Tammany Hall, which is where the Democrats, the Republicans had their own with Thurlow Weed and
right.
Bill Seward and people like that prior to the Civil War. And that became the what would you call it, factory, where you kind of had to get in with.
Yeah. They gangs of New York.
Yeah, I mean, they sort of controlled who got the appointed positions. That was different then too. There were these positions that were, they enforced blue laws, and there were all sorts of things. I think when it comes to New York, maybe one of the best stories is not about New York City. It's about President Cleveland, because President Cleveland was the sheriff of Erie County. And then after that, when he went back to his law practice, he was elected mayor of Buffalo.
Yeah.
And that was a city, even though not in New York City, it was a city very much controlled by the machine. And that's where his claim to fame, that kind of bayoued him to prominence was vetoing the city council, or they called it something different in New York back then, vetoing all of their corrupt Tammany Hall legislation. And then you had Jay Gould running the Republicans over there, who were just as bad and just as much in the cookie jar. And, but he had the power as the mayor of Buffalo to stop that stuff. And so that kind of gained him a lot of national prominence by being honest.
Yeah.
Despite the fact he was vetoing his own party's, a lot of his own party's. In some of it he agreed with politically, but vetoed it anyway because of the connections to in New York you had the stalwarts, the Roscoe Conkling wing of the party there too, and it was a very corrupt state. I mean, it was just a really, really bad political act. Gone up and down since. I think it's always had an air of that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, local government was kind of the Wild West everywhere.
Yeah.
I don't think the progressives' solution was correct, but it was kind of a jungle.
Right.
So, but Grover Cleveland, if you want to study somebody who gained prominence in the Gilded Age, from not taking part, the New York Democrats wouldn't support him for president. The party wouldn't support him because it was run by Tammany Hall, and the when he won and then lost and then won in 1888, when he lost the popular vote and won the popular vote and lost the presidency, it was New York that flipped. His own home state. They flipped on him for Benjamin Harrison. And that was what the difference was in that race. So, yeah, New York, it was an ugly place. And I have a I don't know what you want to call it, nostalgia for New York in some ways.
Yeah.
Because
understandable.
Of the Yankees and because that's where you made it big at one time.
Yeah.
If you conquered New York, you conquered, Frank Sinatra used to say.
Yeah.
So it's weird that I have this sort of nostalgic.
I do a little bit too. Like I'll put on a Billy Joel album and I'll be like, yeah.
Think of the Erie Canal or something, and Statue of Liberty.
Yeah.
There's
Italian restaurants and
New York style pizza. There's something about New York that still kind of has the stock market. Wall Street's there, Broadway. There's just something out of Madison Square Garden. But I'll tell you, I've been there, and the place is a dump. New York's a dump. It's just a boil on the buttocks of the world.
Oh boy.
But your progressives came in to save the day, Jay.
Oh boy, did they ever. So anyways, there was all of this corruption back in the 1800s, and people got together and decided, okay, what do we need to do to be able to change some of this? Because mayors at the time really didn't have any power whatsoever. They were ceremonial in nature.
Yeah, heads of state, not heads of kind of like a king and queen almost.
Yeah,
I'm gonna
way they are now.
Yeah, and I'm going to say something too.
Yeah.
However, the system needed to change back then. And this is a great example of good intentions on some people's parts. Road to hell is paved with good intentions. It's kind of like you look back at. I don't look fondly at the Great Society or the New Deal very much, but I can understand there were some true believers.
Yeah.
Who really thought okay, the system needs something. Can't go the way it's going. But some of their solutions made things worse, not gooder. So, it's a good lesson in that everything you do has consequences. Some you intend, some you don't intend.
Right. I mean, there was all this power wrapped up just in the city council. You look at our federal form of government, there is a legislative branch, which makes the laws. There is an executive branch, which enforces the laws. And there's a judicial branch, which then helps, legislate, or not legislate, helps interpret the law. Sorry. I was going to say judicate, and I said legislate. Anyways,
You know what you meant.
You had pretty much everything, executive and legislative, wrapped up inside of the city council. And, you still had courts, but it was corrupt. I mean, people were
you had courts to a point.
Yeah.
But again, who controlled the appointments?
Yeah.
The Tammany Hall people, the people that they had bought and paid for.
Yeah.
It was, to a degree, that still happens.
Yeah.
But you had the facade of choice,
Right.
It wasn't real.
Right.
That way.
Right. So that's when there needed to be some changes. There was all of a sudden a thought, hey, mayors should have some power and maybe should be executives of the city. And they started coming up with, in some of these bigger cities, a strong mayor with a council, and there was a separation of powers, which it should be. You should have an executive branch and you should have a legislative branch separate. Now, what the progressives did when this started to happen is realize, we can't have that. We have to control all of the power. And so in the early 19th century...
Yeah, one of them might not grow government.
Right. In the early 20th century, you begin to have progressives forming this manager council system. And we should maybe explain this a little bit. You can have a weak mayor council system, which is pretty much the same thing these days as a manager council system, where you have the mayor on the council, just another vote on the council, is weak. In that there's no real authority, gets to preside over meetings, might get to declare when there's an emergency, is the figurehead, ribbon cutting and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, they're the Queen of England.
Yes. And with a strong mayor, it's someone who is separate and oversees the departments of the city and has veto power and all of that.
And let me say two things on that. One, when I first started local government, I didn't know. I thought the mayor acted like a governor. I didn't know that they were just kind of another vote, and they're just kind of were a mayor in title.
Right.
And I want to say something too. You talk about running the executive branch. Mm-hmm. Here's what's more important: picking the heads of those executive branches.
Right.
And that's again, it's like a new president comes in. Just as an example, they pick their own Secretary of State, Secretary of Treasury. They don't head of the EPA, referring to that a mayor should be able to come in and bring their own team that will carry out the executive function of government.
Right.
Not everything requires legislative approval. Just like at the federal government, executive orders exist for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
They're not to make policy, which is how it's been abused, but it is to run the executive department. So they do have a place. And so that, to me, I mean, when you switch mayors, or if you give a mayor a veto power, but they don't have any power over who's running the branch that they're supposed to run, then they're effectively a weak mayor with a veto. It's
right. And I think we'll get into more of that when we're talking solutions, because we need to. But we need to explain the manager council system. Okay, it's got a weak mayor who sits on the council, but then who's the executive branch? It's the administration. With any progressive government, Administration runs the government. It's like our federal government right now. It's run by not Joe Biden, but the people that he's put around him in the administration to run the government, and he just signs whatever they give him. Okay? He makes the speeches, he's the figurehead, but it's the administration that runs behind him that is making all the decisions. Now, same thing in a city, county, or school district. You have an administration that is running the day-to-day business. They're the experts. They quote unquote, right? But they go to the liberal universities. They go and are a part of the liberal social clubs and professional organizations. Yeah. But, they are the ones that are looked to because they work 40 hours a week at their job. Whereas in a smaller town, your mayor is part-time. They get a part-time stipend. They're not experts on local government, and that is why you have a city manager who runs the day-to-day affairs of the city, because you don't have full-time people in government at the city level or at the county level. You have more of that, but you still have a staff that runs the county.
Well, and even more to the point, the city manager in most cases is the only employee that the council actually hires.
Yeah.
In the school district, you'll find the same thing.
Yes.
The superintendent is really the only employee that they hire to a contract and have stipulations in their contract.
Right.
Everybody else is hired by somebody else. Period. I mean,
And oversaw by somebody else or fired by somebody else. Yeah.
your union head is somebody else.
Yep.
But why was that done, Jay, though? I mean, just to bring it up to speed here, why did the progressives back in the Wilson days and all that, why did they want that?
Well, on accountability. I mean, things could get done, and it doesn't necessarily go back to the elected official. I mean, Woodrow Wilson's favorite book was Philip K. Drew, Administrator. He read it over and over and over because that was his dream, to be able to have a government run completely by administration. Because there's one thing that administration knows, and they'll admit, is like, whoever's in office, I was here before you got here, I'll be here after you're gone.
Wasn't his favorite movie Birth of a Nation too?
Yes, it was. Yes, it was. He was a terrible racist. But
everybody's got their flaws.
Right. Well, he had more than many.
Yeah, maybe he had a couple.
Yes. That was the progressive thing. Government knows best. It knows better than the people. And we've got to put people in place who will carry out our vision over the long term, step by step by step, so that even when we deter as a people and we go more conservative, there's an administration, a deep state in place that will continue to put in the progressive policies no matter what. And that's why we end up where we do today with a deep state, where you have a guy like Donald Trump in office and you find that people are working behind his back against him the entire time and not following his dictates. Yeah,
well, I mean, anybody who comes to try to change things for better or for worse, I mean, the studying I'm doing on Huey Long, Huey did a lot of the same thing. They impeached him twice. Mm-hmm. He fought back, but and he was obviously different politically.
Yes.
But, I mean, anybody who came in there, Bob LaFollette, another one. I mean, you can find people who've come in and tried to, Eugene Debs, and they threw in jail. I mean, you can find people who've tried to change the system, point out things, run for office, and push legislation. It's kind of a bipartisan gang up on. To do that. So it's very difficult to change. And, there's a lot of ways, I think, to go about this. But here's the other part of this. We say city manager. Now, that may be different.
City administrator sometimes it's called.
They're called different things. County level, I think they're usually called administrator.
County administrator, right.
It's a necessary job, first off. I'm going to say this. There needs to be... I would say the head of the executive branch should be a mayor, but there needs to be somebody in charge of that branch. And a city manager, I always feel, would be kind of like a chief of staff if you wanted to think of something like that. that kind of assists. You think about it for the president, who kind of assists the president in running the department or running the government. And then the department heads are appointed, they change. Nobody's entitled to a lifetime position. It doesn't mean they have to go either. I mean,
Right.
you're a police chief and you're doing a good job. The next mayor might keep you too. It's so there's always that. There are some cities right now, like Minneapolis and St. Paul here in Minnesota, that are St. Cloud is another one.
Duluth.
Where the mayor has a little bit of extra authority, not quite what I envision as my perfect system,
Right.
but a better system, despite some of the governments and the people in charge of those cities.
But we've seen even in Minneapolis where there has been some crazy stuff coming out, and you've seen even where Jacob Fry has come against some of the crazy stuff coming out of the council and held some of it up. I mean, it's important.
Yeah, well, and again, if Fry was only a vote on the council, he couldn't do that.
Right.
So you're right. I mean, not all of the crazy stuff in Minneapolis he's been behind, and not all of it he's supported. But if he was another vote on the council, it'd be 7-8-6 or whatever it is in Minneapolis, and all of it would go through, every drop of it. Crazy budget stuff that he hasn't supported. He supported enough crazy stuff, but 70% of it or whatever. But you've definitely seen a change there because of that. I would argue that other mayors, Norm Coleman, when he was the mayor of St. Paul, did a lot of that. R.T. Rybeck did it too. I mean, there were people, Rybeck and Soupy Sales Belton or whatever his name was. There were people.
Sales,
I mean, there were people, much left of them trying to push stuff. And if they'd been another vote, same thing might have happened. And so it is important that these people have a check and balance to them, or else just, everything just blows through, and that's not right. Legislation should happen slowly, deliberately, well thought out. Everybody should read it, debate it.
Right.
And I don't mean at a work session where nobody's at. I mean, it should be out in the open. And there should be a judicial review as well. I mean, that's something I think is also missing from a lot of local things, because, particularly statutory cities that rely on state law.
Yeah. Well, let's explain that quickly for a second. There are two types of cities in Minnesota. Statutory cities, which are set up by statutes that have been passed by the Minnesota legislature, and they're governed by any of those statutes, any and all of those statutes, and that can change from time to time. There's home rule charter cities, which write their own charter, like a city based on Minnesota statutes far and above. It is
remember,
self-governance.
Cities were created by Minnesota statute.
Yes.
I mean, you have to remember that. But the state government gave cities the authority of how they wanted to govern themselves. And I think when you talk about possible solutions to this, Jay, and to this weak mayor system and all that, short of legislative action, surviving a governor veto and surviving judicial review, the first step in solving any of this is your city needs to be a charter city.
Absolutely.
And we've touched on this like in some earlier episodes, if you go back like 6 years or 5 years. But ultimately, a charter city is where you can't be a statutory city and change this stuff. You have to be a home rule charter city, and then you can do a lot of these changes we're talking about. We'll use Crystal as an example because you still live there and I used to. Crystal's charter lays out the powers of the city. Well, there it's a city manager, council, and mayor. They're laid out, written by the city.
Yes.
It's not subject to changes in state statute. It's not subject to anything else. They lay out what can be done. Now, they can also change it. I mean, it takes supermajorities, I believe, to do that, just like a constitutional change would take.
Right.
and they have a charter commission as well, just like Minneapolis has one, and so Golden Valley has one too, and Brooklyn Center, and some other of the charter cities around here, and their home rule charter will set up how they're going to run their wards, their elections, what their council's going to look like, powers that the mayors have, powers that the city manager has, who appoints the department heads. You read Crystal City Charter, that's all laid out in there.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the first step that has to happen to put this in some sort of path
Yes.
to changing the weak mayor system. Is you have to become a charter city.
Yes.
You have to write your own constitution. When you do that, and you can lay out your own powers, and St. Cloud has one too that lays out what the mayor can do up there. And that's where I think that I don't know how you go about that, actually. Funny I say that. I really don't know the answer. I don't know the legalities of how you can change that. I know you can, though.
Oh, yeah. And it's laid out in the Minnesota statutes,
okay.
And you have to go through the legislature to get approval to become a charter city. I don't know that they would just say no to say no. Hard to say if everybody decided to become a charter city. I don't know. But
I think what has to happen is if it started to, then everybody would wake up and go, okay, what are they changing here?
Yeah.
But then again, the solution may be a good one.
Mm-hmm.
They may start changing state statutes.
Right.
Or at least debate. I'd like to at least debate them.
Mm-hmm.
And I would also say something too. Your school boards and your counties are set up this way.
Yeah.
And I don't know how to go about changing them. I don't know if they can. The county can elect the president of the county or the governor of the county.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what the process would be there, but ultimately the counties are where it's really a problem because with 87 counties, I mean, Hennepin County. One Hennepin County commissioner controls more money than any one legislator. And so, and when it's 4-3 and there's no check and balance, again, you have a 4-person dictatorship in that county.
You do. But let me explain a little bit about how this works and why this is a problem. Right now, in the legislative branch of our federal government and our state government, they write the bills that become law. Now, if you want to be, honest about it, it really comes from lawyers and special interests and stuff like that. But, okay, it comes from the legislature. They vote on it, send it to the governor. Now, in a city, you have groups like the Met Council that will affect the kind of development you do in your city. You have groups like League of Minnesota Cities, which will often write legislation that gets used in all sorts of cities across the state because all but 3 of the 853 cities in Minnesota belong to the League of Minnesota Cities. You have special interest groups that will write sample ordinances for cities. You will have all sorts of things like this. It's the Met Council here. It is MADO, Minnesota Organization of Development Organizations.
It's MADO.
In the rest of Minnesota. So,
Coalition of Greater Minnesota Cities.
They do it too. Yeah. And you have, Minnesota counties.
Minnesota Metropolitan Municipalities, School Boards Association, Association of Minnesota Counties.
And national ones too. National League of Cities, National School Board Association, National League of Counties. It's all... that's where a lot of the legislation comes from, and then it goes and filters through the administration of the city, and then you have the administrators of the city doing their work, giving the ordinance or whatever to the city manager, or coming up with the budget for the city, giving it to the city manager, filtering it down to the city council, who then votes on it.
Well, if you want to know why, this is how I put it to people. People ask me all the time, why are they doing the same things everywhere?
Mm-hmm.
If a roundabout pops up here, why is there one here and one here and one here?
Why are there signs all over the place that say 20 miles an hour?
20 is plenty.
20 is plenty.
Why is it that they have a complete street here and then all of a sudden it's here and all of a sudden it's here and all of a sudden it's here? I drive up to Grand Rapids and I see complete streets. They have their snowmobile season is twice as long as their walking and biking season.
Mm-hmm.
Yet they have bike lanes. And I mean, but Jay,
Yeah.
why is that happening? Well, it's happening because the same people, the same club, if you will, that your it's not just city manager either. It's your community development person. It's sometimes it's the treasury person. Sometimes it's the I can't remember all the positions, but city planner.
Yeah. Community development director.
Yeah, they all sort of are
Public
part
Works.
of, they're all part of a club, if you will. Some of them are part of it and maybe don't even realize it, but they all sort of get, they'll get told or they'll go to a conference and it'll be, well, yeah, here's what we're doing. This is the trend that's happening. It's happening here, and it's happening here, and it's happening here. This is just grant money. You get somebody else to pay for it. And that's why you're seeing the same things everywhere. Because it's all being the same message. The city council is getting the same message no matter where they are. They're in Alaska or they're in Hawaii. It's complete streets, green buildings, LEED standards, walkability, electric cars. The same garbage is being affordable housing, transit is being pushed no matter what the city. And the whole goal is to have cookie cutter cities. The whole goal is that no city can have their own identity, their own feel, their own character. There are movements to, I've seen it as radical as, why does somebody need more than 650 square feet to live?
Right.
And that affects building codes. It affects new permit requirements. So it's, like I said, it's still a jungle out there, but the jungle is in the administration. The jungle is, and they're not all bad people. I'm not saying that. But they're pawns, and if they don't know they're pawns, I don't know if that's as bad as knowing you are or not. But there's a lot of free money being dangled out there. There's a lot of peer pressure to be part of the club. And it takes certain people to stand up against that.
And I will say, there are far too many cities where the administration leads the council instead of the other way around. And that's just the reality of it. And even if a council or a mayor stands up and tries to lead, where they will work in the background behind their back against what they've been told to do.
Well, there's some of that too. I mean, unfortunately. But, it's going to take some fearless people to affect that change.
Yeah.
And I think short of becoming a charter city, that maybe is step number uno, as they say in French.
Yes.
You lead the staff don't lead you. If that's got to be something that you walk into this job with.
Yeah.
That nobody's telling me what I'm going to say or what I'm going to support. I don't care if the city or cities around me are doing it. If everybody jumped out of an airplane, would you do it too? I mean, come on. There's got to be some self-thinking in here.
Right.
I think one of the things that works against city councils and mayors that the part-time people. These people have families. They have real jobs.
Yep.
It's the city bosses, if you will, who are 24/7 thinking of this stuff. Now, they're 24/7 coming up with how to pitch it, how to sell it.
Right.
And you've got, they send out an agenda 2 days before that they've worked on for a month.
Yeah.
It's hard to fight all those moving targets sometimes. times.
Yes, it is.
So, I mean, you really have to have people who don't look at this as, well, it's a part-time gig. I'm just going to go with the flow. I'll speak up here and there. I mean, you can't have that attitude. I mean, if you're going to run for these positions, and I'm just going to say this straight out, you got to take the bull by the horns here.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to get knocked off once in a while. I mean, there's no doubt about it. But, ultimately, it's going to take people like that to change this system, period.
Yeah, it will.
I mean, you mentioned Donald Trump, but, I mean, you need thousands of people willing to do what he's doing.
Yeah.
Or what he tried to do.
On the local level, counties, cities. 853 cities in Minnesota, 87 counties.
300 school districts.
300 school districts. We could use
1,700 townships.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's 1 out of 50 states. I know that sounds like a lot of people, but
there's thousands in every state, no doubt about it.
Yeah. So here's the thing. So we have these part-time people with families and jobs and whatever, and you've got these full-time people that are running the government that know better than everybody else. So how do you fix that? We have to come up with something new. And I believe, as far as I can tell in Minnesota statute, there's no saying that there can't be a strong part-time mayor. And that is something that we've got to take a look at, is where you extract the mayor out of the council. The mayor has the ability to hire and fire heads of departments, has the ability to review a budget and send it back to the administration if the mayor doesn't like what's in it, that the mayor has the ability to veto legislation. And all of that is super important, where the mayor would come in handful of days a month or handful of evenings a month and, have a meeting with the heads of the departments and get updates from them on what's going on and then be able to give them direction. That I believe is essential for us to get back on the right path. And then on the city council side, you would have the city council. Ideally, you would have an odd number of precincts or wards to elect somebody from. These at-large races have to go.
Yeah, and I've kind of have weird views on how to do that.
Yeah. And then they can, amongst themselves, vote somebody in as the head of the council to preside over the meetings or whatever. School boards already do that. I know that works.
Sure, you can have a speaker of the council, whatever.
Yeah,
you want.
Whatever you want to do. But I think that you have to go that direction. I don't see any other way to do it and get back to a constitutional setup for local government.
Well, remember the original intent of the Constitution, the original. Go back before the 16th Amendment and all that, and the 17th. Because I always get those two mixed up. The House of Representatives was your direct representation.
Mm-hmm.
The United States Senate represented the states.
Yeah.
Okay. The president was indirectly elected by the people and the states.
Right.
Okay. So all of it was to check on each other. The House and the Senate are also there to check on each other.
Mm-hmm.
The people in the states, the whole theory behind it was legislation had to be approved by the people and the states.
Yep.
That was the whole thing.
Absolutely.
It was all to check the power of the federal government. That was the whole point of having that system. So when you think about the power of your city council,
mm-hmm.
if you don't have a House, a Senate, a governor, or president, where is your check
mm-hmm.
on their growth of power?
Right.
Their growth. I mean, think if a budget had to go through all of that, what could change in that? Or if it just needs 4 votes.
Right. Which
one's easier? You know what I mean? It's it's designed so that you have as little control as humanly possible. And in some cases, like I said, your representatives have as little control as possible.
Yeah.
You're in a statutory city, your city council is limited as to what they can do or change.
Mm-hmm.
They can't change their structure, they can't change their powers, because it's all done by state statute.
Yes.
Okay? So, I mean, they can pass codes.
Yeah.
That they can do that. But, I mean, other than that, it's very, very limited as to checking government and maximizing freedom.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, look, like I said, step 1's to become a charter city. Steps 2, 3, and 4 are a little challenging. It could take a long time to do this. But this has to be your long-term goal.
Mm-hmm.
Your long-term goal has to be a city with checks and balances in it. And when I say checks and balances, I don't mean an appointed manager. Okay?
Right.
That's not what I'm talking about.
There's no accountability there. That's taxation without representation.
Well, and also, the manager is, in many, many cases, much more powerful than and it's written in.
Mm-hmm.
I go back to Crystal. It is the powers of the city manager are written in there.
Yeah.
And they have way more power than the mayor has. It's not even
Absolutely.
close. So ultimately,
That's so backward.
Yeah. So I mean, it's backwards just to walk that back. But I will say this: you have to sign a contract with the city manager.
Mm-hmm.
If that city manager is not performing, that's another step 1 that you can take: is get a new administrator in there.
Yeah.
Who's going to work for the council, not dictate to the council. If they refuse to do that, that's grounds for termination. In
Absolutely.
my opinion, it is.
It is.
Or not renewing, or whatever you want to call it.
Mm-hmm.
Or you could be New Hope and literally praise the city manager for getting as much of my tax money to New Hope.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually written in his contract that one of the things, the old one, McDonald had a farm. I don't know who the new one is now. I don't know anything about that person. I don't even know who it is. But I remember one of the things he was evaluated on was how much of other people's money he brought to New Hope. Literally in his contract, that was part of his job. He was actually doing what he was told to do. Go get other people's money.
Yeah.
That's what he did. So it's just, we're looking for one meeting. He said, we're looking for more. We're never done. Never done with that free money. So, I mean, there are ways, though, to control that. And I think, and I'm going to say something, too. You brought up, progressives doing all this. I know there are progressives who are as frustrated with this as conservatives are. There are frustrations with administration that cuts every which way.
Yeah.
And I think you can find some strange bedfellows in doing something like this. I mean, I think two people who are opposite politically, Jay, could agree on performance standards for a city manager.
Mm-hmm.
And say, look, we're just going to adopt this principle. They work for us. And I think you find strange bedfellows there. I think it's a very possible thing that people could. I have met people who don't agree with me on much, who are as ticked off at school administration or at, city administration or whatever. I mean, I think you'd find that's an issue that can go across the aisle. I think.
Yeah.
But it's going to take somebody to be the leader on it.
Right.
That's really what it's going to take. And too many people want to, sit by and watch life go by, and so.
Right. I get paid to show up to the meetings. I'm not going to do a whole lot of extra work outside of them.
Well, again, I mean, you know who they are, and. But I hate to say it. I mean, it takes people to run against those folks or hold them accountable, or it takes a big effort to make change, and you got to be dedicated to it. You're going to find resistance to a lot of this stuff.
Yeah.
Bring up being a charter city. I bet the League of Minnesota Cities has got their programmed response to that.
Yeah. I mean, that's why most of the cities in Minnesota are statutory cities.
And
The vast majority.
You'd think, too, that the League of Minnesota Cities would support cities having their own constitution, not being dictated to by the state.
Yep.
But strangely, they don't.
Nope.
Isn't that funny?
It is kind of funny.
It's absurd. It's an absurdity. Don't tell me you're for city government. You are not. You're full of an agenda is all they are.
But yet 850 cities belong to this
Yeah,
organization.
but they
and pay
do it.
dues.
They do it because they've been told that they need their protection if they get sued.
Yeah.
That's why they're part of it. Most of them don't bat an eye at it. And I'm not saying withdrawing from them immediately is the right solution. What I'm saying is, don't tell me, what I'm saying is this. Why can't, if that's the reason, and everybody I talk to, that's the answer I get. Well,
Yep.
the league gets together and protects all cities. Why can't I call up Geico Insurance and say, okay, I tell you what, or State Farm, I can get you 850 clients. Just protect us against lawsuits.
Yep.
We'll pay insurance, and if we get sued, that's what corporations do.
Yeah.
They don't have the League of Corporations that they go get.
Right.
I mean, why don't cities think outside the box like that? Why do they just cut a check to the League of Minnesota Cities every year and not even?
Yeah.
Hey, man.
Yeah.
You know, the State Farm, I tell you what, if one of you guys are listening, you got to hire me. I tell you what, just give me 10% of the money or something. I'll get these cities together. I'll do it. I'll work for you and do it.
Yeah.
That'd be a great industry, I think.
Yeah. Or if you're going to stay in the League of Minnesota, so their trainings, don't use
do
their
that too,
don't use their sample ordinances. Like, ignore them completely outside of the legal protection.
They can do that if they want
They
to.
could.
Nothing stops
They don't.
them.
They could,
As long
but
as
they
the League of
don't.
Minnesota Cities gets their check, I don't know that they care all that much. I mean, you know.
I mean, they still go to the Capitol and,
Yeah, give their BS that they represent cities, which we all know that's crap.
yeah.
I think that's another thing that needs to happen. I'm going to say one more thing here because
Yeah.
I'm getting tired. I'm going to say one more thing is that I think some people independent of the league and people like that need to go to the Capitol and speak on behalf of this stuff. And I mean elected officials. I mean, you're the mayor of some city. Instead of letting the league go down there and speak for you, I think that's another thing that has to happen. Because one thing that worries me about the legislature is that's who they hear from.
Right.
They hear from the league. They hear from the greater Minnesota cities. But do they really hear that much from Councilman A over in so-and-so?
Yeah.
Unless there's an issue. There's an
Right.
issue with Southwest or something. But I mean, do they hear about, governing structure and that kind of thing, or new ideas about it? I just don't think they get that message too often. And maybe there just aren't the people in office to do it. I don't know. But somebody needs to go down to the Capitol and light a fire under somebody. And you get elected to something, I think you can't wait for somebody else to do it for you. So,
and you can all join together, and on your own and say, hey, let's go down to the Capitol and raise a stink today without forming some sort of regional government body.
I mean, what stops, Anoka County, Sherburne County, and Benton County from all going down there and saying the same thing? What stops them? Nothing.
Nothing.
But again, you got to form those coalitions. And you're right. They don't have to be about everything all the time. You don't have to be dues-paying members of something to form an alliance. I mean, it's just, I don't know. It's just, once again, we're hopeless. I mean, I tell you what, I'm gonna make a prediction right now. I'll be dead before charter cities are a popular thing here in Minnesota.
Yeah?
I'm gonna say that.
Well, we'll see.
Hope I'm wrong. And usually I am with my prognostications. Are usually horrible.
Let's hope this one is wrong.
I'm afraid to check the Braves score. I mean, I'm afraid to check that.
Yeah.
Everybody I pick's getting beat in the playoffs. So. All right, Jay.
Yeah.
Once again, we've been pessimists. We've been down in the dumps.
I think there's a lot of helpful information
I think
in
there
that
was.
one.
The most helpful thing we get is at the end of the day, we get the sign-off sermon from the freelance minister, the only minister I like around here. I'm kidding. Styling and profiling, jet flying, limousine riding, wheeling dealing, son of a gun. Jay, what words of wisdom do we have today? Hey, that rhymed.
Ah. Are you kidding?
Be a poet.
Are you kidding that I'm the only one you like, or you're kidding that you like me?
We'll leave that to the listeners.
Okay. All right. Well, yes, it's true. I am the resident minister here to give the sign-off sermon. We've gotten pretty far off track. But if there was enough of us that felt strongly that, hey, we want to fix this thing, it's fixable. But it means putting our foot down right now. And it means to begin to change things. I mean, you can implement this, change to your mayor / council / administration relationship to each other in the midst of creating a charter for your city. This may take time to do, but I think it's a worthy pursuit. Because right now it is really tyranny of the administration for the most part. And, you find that at the federal level, you find that at the state level, county, city, school board, across the board. It is ruled by administration. And we have to get back to rule of the people. We live in a republic, a democratic representative republic, not a democracy. Even when voting for president, we're not really voting for president. We're voting for a slate of electors that will go choose our president. We need to understand that we do yield power that we're not taking advantage of. We have to understand that God gave us liberty, the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And when the government comes in and makes those ends impossible, we have the right to alter or abolish the government. Now, I'm not advocating that we abolish it, but it does need some altering. It needs some altering at the local level, at the state level, and at the federal level. We need to throw off the chains of any international government that wants to come in here, and we need to stand strong as Americans. We can hash out our differences together and land wherever in the middle, but we need to be of Americans, by Americans, and for Americans. And we have to stop bending the rules. We have to stop ignoring the Constitution, bringing people in here who are not legally able to vote and trying to get them in the door to cast a ballot because they all of a sudden have a driver's license or somebody vouches for them or whatever. They're able to get one through a drop box or ballot harvesting. And we just have to stand up and do the next right thing every day. I mean, that's really what we have to do. When it comes down to it, we have a choice every moment of every day. And when we come to that decision point, we just have to choose to do the right thing. It's easy to get lazy. It's easy to take the easy road until it's not. Because at some point, you allow the people freedom that mean harm for you, And it will not be the easy road anymore. And the hard work that will be involved in trying to turn the tide and go in a different direction is going to be much harder than doing it right from the outset. I know, we've got jobs, we've got families, we've got things that we're involved in. We need a little rest once in a while. I get it. And part of the design of the system is to make us so overwhelmed, so overloaded, that we don't pay attention and we don't get involved in the things that we ought to be involved in, to the things we ought to pay attention to, but we must. Yeah, I know, we're still over a year out from the next elections, but let me tell you this. We have to start now. Yes, it's true. 13 months out, we need to start putting together organizations, teams, campaign teams. We need to start figuring out what you stand for, getting the base of your campaign set. I tell you, all of you are going to jump in the race in May, June, July, August. It's too late. Too late. Even if you join in March, April, you're playing a dangerous game. Why not make a decision now? You're in. You're going to sacrifice to see your country changed. You're going to sacrifice to make sure that you're in a position to be able to make sure that you change the way that your government is run to allow for maximum freedom and cut administration out of the decision process as much as possible. And that the administration does the will of the elected officials and not the other way around. It's got to be done. We've got to make these changes, and we've got to do them now. We are backed up against a wall. Why would you want to keep doing something in a progressive manner that benefits them when you don't believe that that's the best way to do it? Why do we throw our hands up and just say, none of us believe that that's the right thing to do? So let's stand up and let's do this. Let's do it the right way. I believe in you. I ask you to believe in us. If you're interested in putting your name on the dotted line and becoming 20,000 people across this state to run for local, nonpartisan elections, from school board all the way up to sheriff, county attorney, then you need to get a hold of us. Why? Because we've helped people win at the county level, at the city level, at the school district level. We've got a track record. We know what we're talking about. And we can help. But the time to start is now. You can reach out to us anytime at commsolutionsmn@gmail.com. That's commsolutionsmn@gmail.com, and we will be there to help. Let's talk. All right. There's only so much we can do. The rest is up to you. We love you, Minnesota, but now it's your turn to get to work. car.